UK government has decided to block a controversial Scottish bill designed to make it easier for people to change their legal gender. UK ministers say the draft law would conflict with equality protections applying across Great Britain. The bill, passed by MSPs in Scotland before Christmas, is designed to make it easier for people to change their legally recognised gender. It's the first time a Scottish law has been blocked for affecting UK-wide law. Was it the right decision? Let's speak with Susan Smith, co-director for Women Scotland, and Frida Wallace, host of Gender Nebulous podcast. Afternoon to you both. I mean, Susan, first of all, I'm going to take a punt here that you are quite happy and delighted that the British government or the Westminster government have taken this decision.
Yes, and not just our organisation, not just me. I think this is something that many, many women across Scotland from all kinds of political backgrounds, supporters of independence, supporters of the union, are really pleased about, because the Scottish government was warned. They were warned by the EHRC, they were warned by lawyers, they were told about the potential impact on the Equality Act, and they chose to ignore all that. So they can't.
What is that? Sorry to interject, Susan. What specifically, if you can boil it down for us a little, is the impact? Why does it conflict with the Equalities Act?
Well, what has been found in the recent judicial review that we brought was that a GRC changes a person's sex under the Equality Act. Now, what the Scottish government have done is removed any form of process for obtaining one of those GRCs. They've opened it up to anybody. There are no checks, there are no balances, there's no third-party authorisation. They just have to self-declare that they have lived in an acquired gender, and there are no definitions for what living in an acquired gender are, for 3 months, and they will be granted a piece of paper. The Scottish government estimate that there will be a tenfold increase, and many people feel that's a conservative increase. So that is going to have a massive impact on the operation of women's spaces and services, because it becomes much harder to apply restrictions on who can and cannot access those places. I'm quite sure that that the supporters are saying that the exceptions in the Equality Act remain, which is true, but a GRC also comes with Section 22, which gives people additional rights to privacy. It also makes tests for exclusion much harder. It means that they are automatically counted in data, so things like pay gap, things like the public sector equality duty, they become counted as women for purposes under that. And the simple fact of the matter is that there are only two sexes and people cannot change sex. And we are losing potentially the ability to count men and women as sex categories if we were to go down this path. And England and Wales obviously want to protect that.
Okay, all right. Let's put some of that to Frida. But let's start. For afternoon to you, Frida. By the way, thank you for being with us. Let's start on Susan's last point there. That it sort of dilutes the fabric of what we're about as human beings. There's men and there's women. End of story.
Well, that's a very authoritarian stance to start deciding what are men and what are women based on, I mean, you can't legislate for that. I don't have a GRC. I'm very welcome in women's spaces. The cis women I know welcome me into women's spaces because they know that I suffer the same misogyny as those women. You've been talking about misogyny and the police earlier. Do you think a man who is predatory would look at me any differently than he would look at any other woman? No, because men who are predatory and abusers don't care about that kind of thing. The thing is for me, because I don't have a GRC, and even if I did, it wouldn't make any difference. I identify to who no government can rubber stamp my identity. I already self-ID as the person I am. All that a GRC would do was allow me to get married or die in dignity, whichever comes first, to be honest. And it's probably going to be the latter. But, the whole thing is a nonsense and it's built on fear stories. And a larger point to me is the Nicola Sturgeon. It feels to me like Scotland is in transition. Scotland is transitioning into an independent nation. And a lot of people in Whitehall are very fearful of that. So they'll use this trans topic and they'll push it into the media as a fear story. And there are a lot of people on board with it because there are a lot of, like Helen Joyce and Mayor Forstarter, quite happy to let that happen because they come from a very Puritan, authoritarian stance on what gender is. To me, they're like gender police. They want to define in a sort of absolutist way what gender is. It doesn't matter, really.
I mean, what about the point that Susan was making there, that it could mean a huge increase in people suddenly deciding that, in this case, they are women? That was one of the points that Susan made.
Ian, nobody suddenly decides that they are women. When I was 5 years old, I was telling my mum I wanted to be my sister. This isn't new to anybody if you are trans. The thing is with me, I came out when I was 17 years old. And due to social pressures, I went back in the closet. If I'd have had the option of being supported by the government, if I'd felt there was a climate of inclusion and that people were welcoming, I would have come out sooner. And I would hate for young people to feel like they can't express themselves. Nobody's saying you're going to go down a medical pathway. Nobody's saying children are going to go and, have any sort of... It's very difficult to legislate for that. But we have to trust that the parents of those children are on board with that.
Okay, so Susan, do you really believe that suddenly lots of boys are going to suddenly at 16, young men, if you want to call them that, are suddenly going to start self-identifying as women, almost out of nowhere? Why would, as Frida said, if you are trans and you know that within you, a piece of paper is going to make you're not going to suddenly go, oh, right, now there's a piece of paper, now I'm a woman. That's not going to happen, is it?
Well, yes, because it is happening. What we've seen is a 4,000% increase in young girls.
Susan, it isn't happening.
Excuse me, you're doing this again. You always do this. It's very male to try and talk over women.
So you're going to gender me now, are you, Susan?
We've seen
this shows who you are, Susan. I'm sorry. This is who you are. You are discriminatory.
As boys. And this is about social contagion. It's about that age. Girls typically turn to self-harm mechanisms. And unfortunately, the social pressures of this, and then there are also, on the other side, there are also issues around loopholes, because you give people loopholes, and as we know, abusive men will exploit loopholes. We've seen that if they are
the GRC wouldn't change that.
Like they are beyond the law, if they're in the police or social services or children's TV presenters, they will take advantage of that. And there is currently a rapist in multiple serial rapist in Scottish prison who has just announced that he is changing his name to a woman's name and he wants to be put in a woman's prison. Now, maybe Frida does feel like you're a woman, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means either. I'm not an authoritarian. I just believe in science and in sex. My sex is female, your sex is not, and we are different because of that. And you cannot expect...
But are you, Susan, are you saying Frida can't live as a woman?
Sorry?
Whatever the biological background of an individual, whether it's Frida or anybody else, you can choose to live as the opposite sex. We're not North Korea, right? You can choose to do that, and I'm assuming you don't have a problem with that, Susan.
And say you're a puppy.
She does have a problem with that.
That you are one. I don't care how somebody chooses to present themselves. I don't care what they wear. I don't care if they wear lipstick and high heels and a dress. That is entirely up to them. But the reason sex in law is because there are biological differences between men and women, and these biological differences affect outcomes in life. They can be linked to pregnancy, they can be linked to health conditions, they are even linked to how we have, how we devise crash test dummies. Sex matters in life, so it should matter in law, and trying to take that out is important. And that's why I think the UK government have looked at this and said this interferes with the operation of equality law within the UK. Now, we are still part of the UK. Section 35 was at the heart of the Scotland Act. It is an instrument of that Scotland Act. It was voted for by the SNP. It has always been there because some issues of law are devolved and some of us...
Okay. All right. Frida, can I give you a final response on this? Because Susan said quite a lot there that I'm sure you would like to answer.
Yeah, she said a lot that was quite misogynistic about high heels and dresses. I mean, I might be wearing a dress now. You know what? I work for the ambulance service. I wear a uniform most of my time. These are just stupid points she's making. And what about crash test dummies? We know that misogyny exists in the culture, but it's not because of trans women. It's because of systemic misogyny.
No, it's because of sex. It's because of sex.
But I'm not denying sex. Susan, stop being belligerent. This is not about, I'm not denying sex. I'm saying that for me to exist, you're saying I'm a woman. Well, if I am a woman or not, it's not for me to decide. I don't walk into rooms and go, I am a woman. People respect me. If I went into it, say if I was out one night and I went to a toilet and I went to the male toilet and Ian was there, how would you feel if he saw me who was stood at a urinal? He'd feel very uncomfortable.
How do you think women feel when they see you? Because women recognise your sex. I'm very sorry.
They don't mind.
They
don't see me. They don't see me.
We see them.
No, you don't. None of the women I know in my social life will agree with you.
Susan, can I just ask you on that point? Sorry to finish on this point, but are you saying you think Frida should be using the male loos and not the female loos?
Yeah, or a third space.
Wouldn't that be a bit strange?
I don't think Frida or anybody. I actually now am at the point where nobody who is not female, those people should not be in female spaces. If you want to campaign for third spaces, do that. No, but I mean, Frida said people don't even have to have gone down a medical transition route. I mean, what we're talking about is fully intact men coming into women's spaces, and for a lot of women, vulnerable women and minority women, Muslim women, they cannot be in those spaces.
All right, listen, I have to step in there for no other reason than time. Frida, I'm sorry I couldn't give you a final response on that, but I think both arguments were well heard. Thank you to Frida, thank you to Susan. 0344 499 1000.